Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining the Financial Wellness Workshop. I am Litsawa Ramachira. I am a trainee career guidance practitioner based in the Vaal Regional Center, and I'm going to be a program director for the day, and I'm very excited about that. To start off our program today, I'm going to call on Dr. B. Pitswane, who is going to welcome our guests and also give us a brief synopsis as to why we are all gathered here today in this platform. So, Dr. P, if you're here, over to you.
It is my pleasure to welcome you today on Financial Wellness Workshop hosted by Gauteng Region in collaboration with DCCD. We are delighted that you have taken the time to join us as we engage in meaningful conversations about financial well-being, resilience, and personal growth. This workshop brings together valuable expertise and practical insights that can support us in navigating the financial realities of an increasingly complex and challenging world. At UNISA, we recognize that financial wellness is an important component of overall well-being. Financial challenges can affect our emotional health, academic success, workplace productivity, and quality of life. For this reason, creating opportunities to learn, reflect, and develop practical strategies for managing finances is essential for both personal and professional development. And I will delve in the purpose of today's workshop. There are 5 keys that we have identified that we hope that they will empower us on today's workshop. We hope that the workshop will increase awareness of relationship between financial wellness and mental well-being. Secondly, we'll share practical strategies for managing financial pressures and building resilience. Thirdly, the workshop aims to explore how financial literacy contributes to career readiness, independence, and future success. Furthermore, the workshop aims to encourage informed decision-making that supports long-term financial security and overall wellness. Lastly, it provides a safe and inclusive space where participants from diverse backgrounds and life experiences can learn from experts and again from each other. We are privileged today to hear from our presenters, Dr. Nikki Jano and Mr. Frank Mukwana, who will share insights on financial wellness, mental well-being, resilience, career readiness, and financial independence. Their contributions will equip us with knowledge and practical tools that we can apply in our daily life. As we begin, I encourage everyone to actively participate, reflect on the discussions, and make use of the question and answer opportunities. Let us approach today's session with curiosity, openness, and a commitment to enhancing our financial well-being for a healthier and more suitable future. Financial wellness is more than money. It is the foundation for resilience, informed choices, and a future built with confidence. On that note, thank you for joining us, and I wish you a productive, engaging, and enriching workshop. Thank you. Back to you, Program Director.
I'm going to call on our first speaker, Prof. Nikki Tijano. I hope I have pronounced his name well. He is the Acting Director of Teaching and Learning, Strategy Projects and Higher and Portfolio Performance at the University of South Africa. He is a scholar and higher education leader with expertise in curriculum transformation, AI in education, governance, educational technology, and academic integrity. He is a Microsoft certified educator and active contributor to national and international AI initiatives. He plays a leading role in advancing teaching and learning innovation, AI governance, and digital transformation with higher education. Thank you so much, Prof. Nikki Tijano. The platform is yours.
Colleagues, Thank you so much for the invitation, Dr. Pizzwan. Thank you so much for the invitation. Allow me to stand on the protocol that has already been observed. We are meeting today here looking at financial wellness and mental well-being. And when I was asked to come and talk to colleagues regarding this particular talk, I then asked myself, what will be more relevant for students? We were once students, we are still students. I'm still studying. So what will be more relevant? And I hope you can see my screen. I've started with this particular, should I call it a provocative kind of reflection? And I will then ask the volunteers. I did hear in Meramasla, you wanted them to sit back and listen, but I'm kind of a person that loves engagement when I'm teaching. And I would like to have maybe one or two volunteers that can just tell me, if they are looking at this screen, what does it remind them? What does it sort of teach them? If I can have two hands, I already see Tom Kize. Allow me to call me on your first names in case I don't mention your specific title. So Tom, if you can start, and then you will be followed by Mpumelen. Okay, there are three. We'll have those three in that order, and
Okay.
then Margaret, you'll be the third one. Thanks so much, Tom.
Okay, good morning, everyone. I see I blew it. I see people who, it's a history when you look at the show in TV, people who won millions, people who got rough monies, people who got pension funds left by their parents, and then they spent it haphazardly, and then at the end of the day, they had nothing. So that's what I see, and that's what I remember the show. I think it's on Mojalav TV. Thank you.
Tom, you look like you are a TV person. I hope you are able to balance between studies and TV. But maybe if I can just ask you before we go to the second speaker, and Mpumelo, I think your hand is down now. What lesson can you draw from here?
I don't know what lesson is that I can get, but all I know is that I'm here now so that I can learn the skills, maybe the tools of how to spend money and how not to stress about it, maybe. So I really just watch the show, enjoy the show, and then tell myself that if ever I win these millions or I get this amount of money, I won't do what they say. Maybe that's the lesson. I won't do what they did. I'll try and avoid it. But I know sometimes things just get out of control. So I don't know if I answered you. Thank you.
Please let them not get out of control. Thanks for that response. So you will not be like them, where in the future someone is also, making a lesson about you. Thank you so much. Margaret?
For me as well, from my experience of watching the show, it seems like it's a rags to riches type of story, but because people don't have money management skills, they don't know where to start. And often the people also don't know how they ended up with no money. They can recall the events that happened, but I think it was the lack of financial planning when they got the money. It wasn't money they were expecting. So because they lacked those financial skills, they then went on to eventually blow the money, which I don't think is far-fetched even for people in our regular lives. Like, you always want more. Like, money is never enough. But even when you get a large sum of money, if you don't know how to manage the money that you have now, it's highly likely that you won't be able to manage the money, even if it's the lotto or whatever it is that you end up winning. So that's when I watch the show outside of entertainment. Of course, I don't wish them ill, but those are the things I've picked up on. Like, hey, this can happen to even me. Like, it won't maybe be the exact same things, but you'll probably repurpose your finances to whatever is available at the time.
But those can happen to the best of us, isn't it, Margaret?
Yeah, I agree. It can happen to the best of us.
You sound like you are in investment. Are you studying investment?
No, I'm not studying investment. I was just studying LLB, but I think I want to do tax law. But even then, I've seen habits in my own life where I'm like, hey, even I've fallen victim to getting a lot of money and not knowing how to place it properly.
Perfect. I was asked to talk about the mental wellness and financial wellness and mental well-being, and how we can build resilience in this changing world, and especially how our economy is functioning today. So I hope you are going to enjoy. We're going to interact. I'll also be looking on the chats. If you can also keep the fire burning there on the chat, whatever that it comes to your mind as you will be reflecting, just share with us on the chat. As I saw, Lelaka was also writing that most people blow their money because they have never worked hard for it. They don't have the discipline in spending it. Let me hear what others are saying. Reabezu is also saying people on Blue sometimes use money to impress friends so that they are seen as rich and so forth. I like the conversation that I am seeing on the chat, so keep it going. And when I wanted to, to start as an opening reflection, I then asked myself, I've gone through this, but probably there might be others that are going through this. Have you ever worried about money while preparing for an assignment, for an examination?
Yes, I have been worried about money while preparing. Actually, I am currently worried about money as I'm preparing for my studies because I need some things to proceed with my studies, and currently I'm frustrated because I applied for funding and received funding, but when the money had to reflect in my account, it's just going back and forth. So it's currently causing me frustrations, and I cannot concentrate currently on my academics. If you may allow me to reflect back on the I blew it. I don't know if you would allow me. The thing with I blew it, I've always wondered, where are those that spend the money wisely? Why do they keep showing us those that recklessly spend the money? Where are those that really actually made the money go a long way or made the money work for them? So yeah, that was my reflection whenever I watched the I Blew It series. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Bonnie. I think I love your thinking and the angle that you are taking. But as you know, from communications or from media, bad stories or sad stories tend to sell fast. If you were to follow how, that newspaper, Daily Sun, got to be loved more than anything, it was more about bad things and so forth. But we're not here for that. I hear you that you are frustrated. So you will then realize that all of us, when we are facing financial difficulties, it follows us in our sleep, it follows us in our concentration, as Baloyi indicated, in our relationships. We do know, if you follow the courts, you will understand that there is about 30% of marriages that broke down, and at the center of it was financial issues, but also in academic confidence. And that is something that we have to be mindful of. And some of us really go through this frustration, not because of our will, but how the situation is. But like my Tom indicated, there are those that will have received money and they just squandered that money. And I think we need to appreciate the Directorate of Counseling to think about this idea, so that for those that are going to be rich, today's Wednesday, I think there is lottery that is playing. There might be those of you who are going to try their luck, and boom, tomorrow you're a millionaire. You haven't even planned for it, like Lelaka indicated on the chart, that there are those that have not even worked hard for this money, and that is why they end up doing like that. If you are following sports, you'll also understand that, especially in our country, most of the footballers, they go from rag to riches, like Margaret indicated. And there have been calls for financial literacy for footballers to say they are earning a lot of money there. Like in our case, Bafana has just gone out of World Cup. They did well based on their previous performances. And those guys will have received some incentives from the national body. But if you were to give them about 7-8 years, some of them will not having those monies. Very few of them, they start to invest in while they are playing. And if you look within soccer, 30 years of age, it is your prime time. Beyond that, you will be likely to secure a sport. And those are some of the realities that we are facing today in our economy, in our country, and so forth. So I wanted to see, perhaps with a raise of hands, I should have maybe done this via a poll. But if I were to look at these four options on the screen, what is your biggest financial pressure now? Remember earlier, we were just indicating, or we wanted to understand who are having financial frustration when they are preparing assignment. But by just show of hands, I just want to check who of you have got pressure. The first option, I just want to see by raise of hand. The first option is those that have got challenges with data, laptops, Wi-Fi connectivity costs. Let me see by raise of hand. I see Ondlametse, I see Lindo Kutlechili, Balois Hobela. It's about 10, 11, I see it's 14, 16, right, about 20. Let's see those that really have got pressure as far as food security, rent, and monthly expenses. I raise up hand again. I see the number is going up. It's fluctuating between 23 and 24. Now it is 26, 27. And if all of this above affects you, you will have your hand raised up for a long time. And then on this one, I want to do it differently. Those that have got to juggle with their income and support their families, in the financial literature, we refer to it as black tax. Maybe let me have one volunteer that can indicate how this is affecting them or is giving them pressure.
Is the main reason why I'm saying that I'm affected by all of the above, it's because I'm a bit skeptical as to which one not to say affects me, because all of them affects me, right? So in terms of black tax, it comes from a place of being an elder's daughter in the family. When you are the firstborn and everything is on your shoulders, both your parents are not working, so you have to be there for the family. From data, from food security, you need to make sure that you secure them from everything, and by doing so, if realistically speaking, it means that you will acquire some debts on the side, which may be a bit difficult to repay in a long term, especially if you're, because initially I was paying for my studies while I was earning a very basic salary, right? So debts are bound to be there, given that you can't just fold arms and say, I'm working and then I don't study on the side because I don't have a bursary. You just kickstart the study journey, and then you will see the bursary will come at a later stage if it comes. And I was lucky that I got the bursary when I was studying towards the third year. Then I got approved.
So, but you still try to work hard so that this does not affect your academic performance, right?
Yes, I'm trying to balance the equation, but it's not as easy as I would say it right now. But I'm trying by all means to balance the equation.
Thank you so much. Thank you for sharing that. So yeah, you can see, I think majority of us looking at the charts, B, C, D affect them. There are those that are affected by A, C, D. And I'm sure if we were to have done a poll and you have voted, you would have seen the spread in terms of how we are affected by this. And I have to start by unpicking that financial wellness is actually not the same thing as being rich, because half the time we tend to confuse it. Even those that are rich have got money. Their wellness is affected, and that's why we have to unpack. The first part of financial wellness, it is about ability to have direct control over your funds. And it is important that for every rand we need to know where it goes instead of us not knowing. And you know, in other workshops, I will normally talk about 7 types of spendings. And the other one that I normally use or give example with is what I call an exhausted spender, where someone will have bought many things and got tired of buying. But when they get home, they really ask themselves, why did I buy this? Do I still need it? And I always jokingly say, you know, perhaps we need an industrial psychologist to sort of study women, because women in the literature, it does indicate that whenever they are stressed, they are frustrated, they will want to go and do shopping. But if you look in terms of that kind of shopping, it's sort of a temporary remedial action, in the sense that whatever that will have been frustrating you will still be there. And it's sort of an ongoing literature that is looking at that, a psychological behavior as far as spending is concerned. So we need to understand where each and every rand goes, right? And the written allocation strategy will eliminate panic, will sort of restore your mental daily clarity. And there are those that are using budget, and they journal everything so that they can see, what am I going to buy, how much am I going to spend, and so forth. But for those that do not even plan for their money, this is where the challenge comes. So the first element of financial wellness starts with control. The second element is emergency capacity, the unforeseen circumstances. So will you be able to absorb any unexpected financial setback or shock? So if you think now in terms of the US-Iran war, somehow we are affected, because then oil is what keeps the economy going. So if that war escalates and continues, it means the price of oil is going to be increased. And as it is increased, everything then is gonna be affected. So with that are we able to sort of survive if there is a sudden increase in taxi fare for those that are still using public transport? If there is urgent device repair or car repair, family repair, family emergency rather, especially in our case where we are talking about black tax and supporting families, and boom, all of a sudden, there is unexpected death in the family. How do we navigate those? Do we have got money available to ensure that the funeral can take place, or do we still have to go and borrow money so that the burial can take place? And those are some of the things. So are we having that emergency capacity so that we can deal with those unforeseen circumstances? That's the second element. The third element is conscious choice. And here is ability to have that psychological freedom to say, not now, to impulsive social spending. And here in that typology of spending that I normally use, we call these ones stingy people, because they are not extravagant with the money. They may have money in their account, but spending that money becomes difficult because they are not taken by peer pressure, as someone indicated on the chart, that some of these people that we talked about from iBlueIt, they want to impress, they want to show off that we can flex with our financial muscles and so forth. But if you're able to do this is where it is important, without feeling shame, guilty, or social exclusion, then you are fine. So you will have money there. You are not pressured to go and buy whatever goods that it can be to show people that you can afford, be it a car, be it nice shoes and so forth. As long as you have got that choice, but without also you going through some strain and asking yourself to say, am I not really starving myself here? That is important. Social exclusion becomes other, because if you look in terms of our social class, there are certain people that want to belong to a particular group socially. And for you to belong to that group, you have to have certain types of bags, you have to have certain types of, crib and so forth. So are you having pressure? Once you have got pressure, then it means you are losing your financial wellness, and that becomes important. The fourth aspect is future confidence. So building clear, realistic financial roadmap for your either graduation, career transition is most important skill. So while we are studying now and working, or those that are studying full time, but will you be able to build this roadmap so that at that time, money becomes a tool for empowerment rather than a source of persistent threat. And that's where the life skills of using money becomes important here. So if you remember these 4 C's, as I normally call them, then you will start to have control of your finances, and then your financial wellness will sort of improve going forward. So as a UNISA student, our budget has got a number of buckets rather than just tuition. Study needs in terms of, especially those that would have still been waiting for, and I had, I think it was Solo, you did indicate that the bursary only came in the 3rd year. So one is then thinking and then say, what about 1st year and 2nd year when you did not have funds? What does it mean? So there are all of these costs that are there. There are those that are affected by family in terms of supporting the family and so forth, household expenditure, and then also future search for those that are looking for greener pastures and so forth. You might take it for granted, but for someone who does not have access to resources, for them to go and submit their CV elsewhere, they have to print it out, even if it is 8 or 15 rand. That is a cost that has to be factored into that particular aspect. So, and you can then see with UNISA's mode of learning, where you are studying wherever you are and so forth, there's some element of isolation. But on the other hand, we know that there are hopes, especially when you are at the graduation hall, sitting there on the podium with the procession, you see others crying, others cheering, others dancing, because then they know what they have worked hard for, what they have to put in to have that particular qualification. So this is what a typical UNISA student is having. But if we're to bring socioeconomic conditions into reality, think of about the headline CPI 3.5. How long has the Reserve Bank been trying to keep the CPI within the 3% target, between 3 and 6%. And last month when I was listening to the radio, I heard that it was even shooting towards 4%. And I said, oh, once it shoots 4%, we're going to see increase in the repo rate. And then once the repo rate increases, the interest rates are going to increase and so forth. So this is what is affecting us, which then means if food prices increases, then we have to forgo other things. Because then food, as per Abraham Maslow indicated, is a necessity for us to continue. So those are things that we have to put in mind when as a UNISA student. When we think of unemployment rate, the official unemployment rate is about 60% of the youth, and those that are sitting between 15 and 34 years of age. And when we look at the expanded definition, it's around 59%. But then it sort of put pressure on us to say, what am I studying? What kind of qualification am I studying? Because those in a way relates to the financial pressures that we have, the mental well-being. Because if you're going to go and graduate and do not get a job, it becomes that pressure again. So it therefore highlights the importance of acquiring digital skills. Practical evidence expertise before graduation is essential. So, and you'll see in comprehensive universities like ours, certain courses have got practical component that is compulsory, but majority of courses do not have practical component. And if you see in this era of AI, we have seen that practical skills are even more important, and that is why you have to engage in lifelong learning over and above the qualification that you are studying. Go and get the certification around AI, certification around machine learning, certification about digital transformation, personal communication, and so forth, so that then you can improve your relevancy in the job market, because there is a correlationship between unemployment and financial distress. And that becomes important for us to also, prepare ourselves to be marketable when we complete our qualifications. So a degree is powerful. However, transition takes a strategy. So in other words, our financial resilience starts before your first full-time salary. Because 1, you need to build your digital skills. 2, you need to develop and maintain your professional relationships, and then now deal with the micro outcomes that will come out of that investment that you have done. so that by the time you get your salary, you are not already frustrated financially. And it goes to what one was saying in the chat, to say, by the time we start to receive this money, we're already frustrated. We now want to sort of fill up the gaps that we've had for a long time. So a strategy, study and qualify, build on your skills and network, because the network becomes important. And let's say, for example, we knew each other, and then I know that, okay, so-and-so has got a particular skill in 1, 2, 3, 4, a qualification 1, 2, 3, 4, and I hear that this company is looking for someone. Then I'm able to reach out and say, hey, have a look at on LinkedIn. There is this company that is looking for X, Y, and Z. And then, of course, the earn and grow becomes the outcome of what you have invested. So hence I'm saying, in this case, much as your degree may be powerful to get you somewhere, but the transition towards that end goal becomes important. How you get towards that goal becomes very much important. So in terms of our mode of learning as UNISA, it is a flexible way because there are those that can study at the same time and work. But that will need some sort of sacrifice if you look at the last block here, right? So how are you going to juxtapose between what is required in terms of the cost of studying, the time, there are those that are working, night shift of studying, and also the energy that's required. Sometimes there is fatigue and so forth. And you might have heard about unfortunate incident last year when one of our accounting students unfortunately passed on while she was studying, because you'd understand the qualification itself has got a high stakes. Probably there was pressure at work, there was pressure at home, and then now there's these deadlines that one has to meet. All of those, it means there is sacrifice. And a sacrifice from family. Some of you, especially if you are working and studying at the same time, it means you don't see or you don't spend as much enough time with your family as you would like to do. So, which then means much as distance education is flexible, but that doesn't become at a free cost. There is some sacrifice that one needs to do. And all of this, we have to talk about them because they affect our mental well-being. They will also affect our financial wellness, especially for those that are dependent on bursaries. So in terms of the stress, that financial stress, it starts with the money stress. And then that money stress leads to poor sleep. Because obviously, if things are not adding up and so forth, how are you going to sleep? And then you will have less attention or low focus, missed work. It could be assignment, it could be exams. And then debts are also increasing in a way, because if you have not written exam, you now have to either apply for a supplementary examination or an AgroTET, or you have to re-register. And this is the money that you will not have planned at the end of the semester that I will have to re-register again and so forth. And if the money is not there, then the debt increases. So the goal is not to remove every stressor in the equation, but is to create small points of personal control in each and every stage. And you can see it all starts with the money. So, and even biblically, I think Proverbs does indicate that the money is the root. But in this particular case, we would like to ensure that each and every student is able to manage this particular stress, at least to a controllable level before things go south, right? Now, in terms of the anchors of financial resilience, the first one you got to know regarding your numbers. So basically, in terms of the income, the expenditure, you got to know those numbers. List every income and fixed obligation that one has. And that is where I said earlier, there are those that will journal that, and they will know that on a monthly basis, I'm parting out with so much money. You may recall there was a banking scam of 1900, and the guys or the company that came up with that scam made billions and billions of rands from most, because how many of us do check our bank statements? We don't check. And because, with the settings that the banks will have provided, you find that, you find that anything less than 100 rand is not give you notifications and so forth. And we hardly ever check that. But that 99 can go a long way. So it is important that for every income source and expenditure, it get to be written down. And then also making sure that once you know what comes in, what goes out, that financial control that I talked about will start to show. Then plan before the month begins, if at all is possible. So for those that did accounting or finance, they will know about zero-based budgeting, where now you're going to assign every single rent a job before allowance or any wage comes. So in other words, you are going to make sure that for every rent or for every cent, I'm accounting for that particular fund and for that particular expenditure. So that becomes important. But half the time, when the money comes, especially unexpected, we just go and spend it. And hence, the shows like I Blew It were conceptualized because it was starting to be a problem. They were starting to witness a problem and said, how do we resolve this particular problem? It is still not resolved. Financial institutions are trying with financial planners and so forth, but the problem is still there, which then means the problem needs more than just a show for us to come. And hence, there is a talk of institutionalizing financial literacy even at the school level, so that then we grow up understanding how do we manage our funds, how do we manage our money, so that we can have that financial discipline. Then the fourth anchor, deal with asking for help as early as we can. Half the time, we wait up until it is late, and at that time, the money has low, or as they say, the bus has already left the station. And those are the things that we need to think about. So once you see that you've got a problem, it could be a gambling problem. But once you realize that you've got a problem, before you're going to deny, because some of the signs start with denial, then you will have to start to ask for assistance as early as we can. The same applies to investment. Investment is going to benefit if you start investing at an early age, because you still have number of years ahead of you, either before retirement, so that then you can accumulate the interest as far as that is concerned. So let's come to another topic that I call psychology of money. And with this topic, I then say the soft life dream that everyone wants, the soft life dream that we normally see with the likes of I Blew It, that usually means a tough economy. There is nothing wrong with the comfort, enjoyment, and celebration and so forth. But the danger begins when that lifestyle is financed by high interest debt, hidden anxiety. Sometimes it's also hidden regret, where you will have gone out, spent lavish wedding, lavish birthday party, graduation party, but then there is that regret that comes. And I'm sure some of us will have gone through that. Or pleasing onlookers, especially the pleasing people that don't even know you. But even in the first place, why do you have to please them? What is it in after you have pleased them? Then I'm asking this key question: is this purchase that I'm doing now genuinely building or transforming my life? Or is it just a performance act just to show people that they can, I can flex? If you go to social media, Instagram, you will then realize that we are not equal here. There are people that, are really flexing and so forth. But I'm always asking to say, are they thinking for tomorrow? And if they are thinking for tomorrow, will they survive for tomorrow if tomorrow comes? Especially when eventually your financial hardships are there. And those are some of the things that we really have to think about. So again, we that question in a way is trying to show us that the luxury that we are always thinking about does not necessarily display the debit order. So if you look around social media, you will see people that are posting about their VIP lounges where they're having fun. And as I said in the previous slide, there's nothing wrong with all of this, as long as it doesn't come at a cost. New designer gear, clothes, and so forth, fine dining, blessed and unbothered. So those are some of the captions that we see. But what remain unposted is the overdraft that will have been increased just to show off, the store debt, payday loans, the 3 a.m. panic attacks. At 3 a.m. when someone is supposed to pray, they're already just applying their mind as to how I'm going to survive and so forth. So, and this is what we normally see in the social media in terms of the post, to say they are selling us a nice life that everyone will like to have. But what is the pain behind that particular post? And is there regret? For me, if there is a regret or there is an anxiety, then I would say thank you to that kind of life. Again, those different types of spending, there is what I normally call essentialist. And this essentialist is a disciplined individual who also ensure that they do not restrict their essential growth in investment and so forth. But then there is also an extravagant who's flashy, wants to show things, they enjoy premium things, but I always say ensure that it doesn't destroy your emergency buffer. Remember, we talked of emergency capacity earlier. There is also the envious, because when I have bought an iPhone, I can also go and buy iPhone. But we are forgetting that our financial muscles are not the same or are not equal. Then there's the fourth one, the entitled buyer. So this is what I normally, use to teach in terms of different types of spending behaviors. And then the entitled one are those that say, I deserve this treat. And if you think of the young ones, whenever you go with them to the shops, they just want everything in the shops. And the moment you say no, they start to throw tantrums. Those I normally liken them to the entitled. The emotional buyer is that one that I indicated, to say when they've got stress, mental block and so forth, they think that going to shopping will assist. At that time, when you are shopping, you are thinking you are healing that particular problem. But when you get out of that shop, you've got a lot of bags that you are carrying, but your bank has actually got hurt in a way. So even the literature indicate that it's a temporary relief, but then there might be long-term regret, especially where now there is one single source of income. The ego-driven is those that really wants to, to impress, to show off that they can flex the best way they can. So I'm sort of wanting you to reflect, and you can also put it in the chat to say, amongst these 6 types of spenders, which one best describes you? Are you an essentialist? Are you an extravagant spender? Are you an envious spender? Are you an entitled spender? Are you an emotional spender, or are you ego-driven? Some of you are already starting to reflect as far as those spending patterns are concerned. I need to move a little bit faster. So again, the other lesson, more income does not automatically equate financial freedom, just like more money or being rich does not equate to financial well-being. So in other words, we have got different types of incomes that we can, but when your income increase, let your savings and debt pay off rate grow before your lifestyle expenses do. So what do we do to quickly explain this? When we receive increase in our salaries, the first thing that majority of us do is about a car, it's about new clothes. Very few will think about investment in shares, in equities, and so forth. So when the income increase, you have got a marginal increase in expenditure, but not the investment. And that's basically the message. And we normally see that the first thing is to upgrade the lifestyle. So once there is an increase in income, the first thing is to increase the lifestyle. But what about fixed investment commitments? And then you still have the same month and panic, the 3 a.m. panic where you've got stress and so forth, and then desired for the next raise. Similarly, for those that are working or those that are also getting their allowance, especially if you are getting a monthly allowance, you will then realize that you will be counting days before the next payday, before the next allowance comes. But if one was financially disciplined, they will have, stretched that money to reach the next allowance of the next payday date. But in most cases, evidence does show that we are not waiting for that, and it becomes a problem. There is a challenge also amongst most of us of not being able to distinguish between needs and wants and status demand, which is the new thing that is slowly coming. So for you as a student who's studying, the immediate need might be data bundle to submit assignment on time. In the past, as university were giving allowance for data, but the cost were growing so much that the university has to rationalize that expenditure. But if you can check maybe unkept entertainment subscription for streaming movies, I saw last month when that movie, I'm just forgetting the name, Jonas, I think so, and I didn't even watch, but I was just reading on financial news. The streaming for that particular month went up because there were a lot of people that were now signing up on Netflix just to watch that show, and amount of views that show have generated. So I always read behind the numbers, behind the story to say what are the numbers, the financial numbers and so forth. So if one is going to have unkept entertainment subscription, I would rather say that particular unkept data could be using for learning on YouTube and so forth, where now you really get educational, programs rather than just for entertainment. Nothing wrong with entertainment, but it has to be balanced. The status demand, we're seeing more and more. Yes, Polygamist, thanks so much. We're seeing more and more people buying high-end designer headphones on credit. And on any other day, I will also, want to, have a sort of a workshop around how do we leverage our credit cards, because there are those that are using credit cards for transaction purposes, but then they do not honor the payment dates as far as those credit cards are concerned. And it's something that we have to think about. So in terms of the triggers, if you think of these types of spending behavioral patterns, what are the triggers? Whichever the spending behavior that characterize you or define you, what will be the triggers? It could be stress, and research has indicated that when we are under a lot of financial and mental distress, shopping is what people do. So those that are having stress, they are going to simply go on junk food and so forth. I don't know the link between that, whether it sort of lower the stress and so forth. Celebration is another, trigger. Social pressure, we can do it, especially around the entitled kind of behavior or egoist kind of behavior, that because they're having it, I can have it. If my neighbor have a sort of a day party for their 6-7-year-old, then I can also have it and so forth. So the budgeting strategy is, now that we know those problems, the triggers and so forth, in terms of the strategy, make sure that every rand has got the job before it disappears. Within Jewish literature, they will tell you that every rand must circulate at least among 10 hands before it goes out to support external business and so forth. So in your case, use the same analogy, but let that rand have a task at hand to achieve. I talked about listing the incomes that you have, the allowances and so forth, subtracting those costs that are there for survival, Maslow hierarchy of needs, level 1 and level 2, and then allocate, if you've got debt, if you don't have debt, allocate that remainder to savings. And then you also ensure that income minus allocation is always 0. In that case, you'll start to build that financial well-being that we are looking for. So this just hypothetical example as how one can do that particular budget. Of course, you are going to get this presentation, then you can always practice, but there are also online budget calculators that you can just use. What is more important, we ought to learn how to save. This month, July, is a savings month in South Africa. Not many know. So, and we hardly ever save. So if at all, we are inculcated into the culture of spending, but not of that saving. So if you were to look at this 5,000 allocation, how we wish we could have had this is how you can divide it. But what is more important, taking control of your money patterns and so forth. Small daily leaks, similar to droplets of water that are leaking on a daily basis. by the time we add them cumulatively, it becomes a massive loss. So imagine if one is spending almost 500 on a weekly basis on, it could be impulsive airtime, data, takeaways, going to rest on a weekly basis. How much is it per month if one is doing that consistently? So, and remember I said entertainment and everything celebration is not wrong. What is important is to take control of that so that they do not control us. So think of that small daily leaks as to how much is going to be at the month end. And you might have seen the strategy with the insurance companies. When they advertise their insurance, they will even tell you how much you pay. They will say R1.27 or R1.80 per day. But if you are going to calculate that cumulatively to say how much will it be per month, then you will understand. So we have to optimize our data connectivity, especially given our situation where data has become costly aspect of learning. Within learning management system, we have introduced, as I said, zero-rated way of accessing, just for you to submit your assignments and so forth. But of course, assignments will have needed, research and so forth. For those that are living closer to the campuses, regional campuses, then they can leverage their computer labs and access their internet and so forth. But one would also say, but I don't have money, transport money to reach that regional campus and so forth. We understand. But where possible, you could leverage, those platforms that are zero-rated, campus Wi-Fi's. I've talked about that. Those that can afford to study at night, there are those night all bundles that one can get. And sometimes, especially when you have got very tight budget, these things become handy. To some, those that have got money they can afford, they will realize that, or they even say, no, this doesn't matter. But there are those that it could really matter. Protecting food security on student budget, especially those that are getting NSFAS allowance. It may not be enough, but check in terms of how are you going to spend that money so that it can rest you up until your next allowance date. Commuting where is possible, exam travel and planning. But in our case, most of our exams are online. The financial cost for transport, it will be when you have to attend certain workshops that are in person, the orientations that are in person and so forth. And where possible, co-ride, especially in this age of your Uber, your Bolt and so forth, then you could think about those. But in terms of financial expectations with wisdom, especially those that have got burden, and I don't like calling it financial burden because for us, it becomes something that you have to do to support the family. And quite interestingly, coincidentally, they were talking about it on the radio sometime this week to say, what we normally know as a black tax and so forth. How do we navigate that? But and these are coming from the literature, by the way, healthy boundary steps, where now you are going to communicate your exempt allowance. If it is a salary, you can also indicate that this is how much I'm getting and this is how much I can afford to assist me to avoid. There are families that we know that their relationship has broken because someone is working and they are not giving them enough. Then they are also blackmailed and say, if it wasn't because of us, you would not have gotten that job and so forth. So those are some of the dynamics that we are seeing in families and creating problems and so forth. But when one is supporting their family, that number one comes from love and solidarity. But it shouldn't be that thing of pouring into an empty cup. There must be sustainability. As we are supporting them, are they also starting to work on themselves so that they can be self-sustainable? Because if there's no self-sustainability, it is likened to pouring on an empty cup. Credit, we ought to be careful. There are those that normally go and take credit, especially to unscrupulous lenders who normally charge beyond what is minimum prescription by law. And if you were to do that, go and take in credit, you ought to know that Reserve Bank has approved that the prime lending rate is 10.5%. But if you are going to take a loan from a loan shark or microloan company somewhere down there that will charge 27%, for me, that is a red risk. Red flag, and we need to shy away. So If at all possible, may I guide and advise that we stay away from transactional debt as far as possible, where you are going to borrow money. I think my time is now reminding me. You are going to borrow money just to finance transaction purposes. So those are the things that we have to think about. Someone they say Capitec lending rate is 21%. They do give them that latitude to go up to, I think, 25, 26%. But then shop for lower interest and indicate that I know that the lending rate is so much. Of course, banks have to create money. They have to create profit, because then they are parting away with their money. They have to assure that they will earn on the interest on the money they've borrowed you. But also educate yourself when you enter into that agreement. For those that are starting to work as well, we see that in terms of the cars, when they buy their cars, they buy them at a very exorbitant prices, interest, the balloon payments, they don't understand the balloon payments. Those are some of the realities that we see, and we have to think about them. So the 4 questions that I will want to guide you before you enter into a loan or credit. Ask yourself about the total cost that will include the interest, the initiation fees, the monthly fees. If you think of a car, I think for the longest time, they will charge a monthly initiation fee of 57 Rand. You may take it for granted, but if you say 57 Rand multiplied by 60 months, how much will it be? On top, put interest rate, how much will it be? Income stock, how will I pay this monthly installment if my bursary income for those that are working is delayed? And then in terms of a gap, do you have got emergency cover? And then value that is left after that. Those are the things that one has to ask themselves as far as that. Because your credit record, in some cases, you will not get job if you've got a bad credit record. I see in social media, others, they are talking about, let's put our credit report on table before we enter into a relationship. Who will want to marry someone who's highly indebted and so forth. So those are some of the conversations that are taking place around the relationships and so forth. And as I said, there are marriages that had to break down because of financial ill discipline, for that matter. Also, in terms of fraud, make sure that those pyramid schemes, and I'm now sharing a personal example. I had a cousin that we were on a lengthy conversation over the weekend. He dropped out of school at the 3rd year, and at home they were expecting that this guy is going to finish, going to work. And then he entered into Forex. When I asked him, have you got knowledge of how the Forex works? Have you got technical understanding how Forex works? You have now dropped out of your school, 3rd year you're supposed to complete. No one knows when are you going to complete. You are now telling me that you are into Forex. Poor parents do not even know what is Forex all about. But he was selling me this dream that he's going to get this money and so forth. And I sort of listened with pain. And those are some of the things that we go through. Also, avoid machinational traps, especially those that are keeping your ID and as a collateral, security for you to return their money. These things we may take for granted, but they are there. And ours is just to sort of guide you and warn you so that you don't fall into that particular trap. So I talked about saving as early as you can. Start saving as early as you can. Even if it is 100 Rand a month, by 12 months, you already have 1,002. Depending on the interest that you have taken, it can go to 1.3 and so forth. Savings. Let's inculcate the culture of saving, because South Africa is one of the poorest countries when it comes to saving. We don't save, we consume. The likes of Singapore, they are even above us as far as saving is concerned. And remember, once we save, the very same money that we save with the banks can also grow and assist the economy. For those that did economics, will understand about circular flow of money. So most of us, what do? We are a spending nation, and we need to slowly change that attitude and that mentality. About stokvels, I saw in the literature, there is what you call youth stokvels, a crowdfunding of some sort, if at all is possible. But of course, then you need proper governance that can assist with this youth stokvels so that we are able to account for our money. We don't want where we put all our money, all of a sudden Nikki has run away with the money. So think about those, but they are starting to happen. And you can pull money together and start something. There are those that are even thinking of starting a business around that pooled funds and so forth. It's one of those things that you can think about. Digital investment clubs, where you are forming disciplined peer savings club with strict constitutional rules, and you can also approach the bank as to how can we do that. So think about those. And for those that you will then will be coming or originating from villages, we know the importance of stokvels for most of us and how they've assisted us. So if you are an entrepreneur and you want to bring like-minded people, and then you sort of, with the little money that you have, and you put funds together, that's what we call crowdfunding. Then you can think about a sort of a future investment and so forth. As I said, the earlier you start, the little you start with is gonna assist with compound interest, because then it's going to accumulate faster than if you are going to put. I see some people will then rather leave their money in the savings account. They just enjoy when they open their banking app, they can see whatever the thousands are that day. I would rather say, if that money you're not going to use it for the next 12 months, rather put it in an investment account or unit trust, so that then it can earn you interest and so forth. And whenever you want to, access, then you can access. Unit trusts are much more safer, money liquid schemes compared to other forms of investment in terms of ease of access, especially if someone wants to access those. The earlier you start savings, the better. So the literature does indicate 25, 35 years of age, you can save, because you still have about 25 odd years of working. But if you start earlier, by the time you reach that 25, which is the minimum, and 35, which is the median year, you will have accumulated something. So it's something that we have to think about. And as I say, let's inculcate that culture of saving, where you could even have multiple savings account where you are saving your money, but not necessarily the bank savings account where you can go and transact that money on a daily basis, because it doesn't give you much. I think Capitec so far is the one that gives highest money based on the amount of money that you have got in your savings account. I think it's 5.5% compared to other banks. But if you look at that money, you also have to pay the banking fees every month end. So the 5% that they're giving you becomes zero sum, because then they take it with banking fees and so forth. Start also think about developing your skills. I did talk about digital skills, AI literacy. Those are some of the things that will start to allow you to have a value when you go to work, a place of work. In this day and age, if you read a 21st century report produced by World Economic Forum, it will tell you that digital skills, personal skills, communication skills are skills of the future. Are you sort of self-training? LinkedIn has got a number of these free courses that we can use to augment the qualification that you are studying for. But if you ask me, within AI, you are going to be relevant as far as job market is concerned. Professional networks, I did talk about them. I would rather prefer a LinkedIn account than a Facebook account. Perhaps we differ. But with LinkedIn, you can see opportunities that are coming, the networking that can be done, getting a mentor and so forth. Of course, the two platforms are not designed for the same objective. With Facebook, it's more of entertainment, but I see there are those that are really doing business and so forth. But look how you build your professional network and how it's going to create value for you. Monetizing your unique skills without destroying your studies. For those that are in their third year, someone indicated that they are in their third year of law. Consider doing sort of tutoring for the first years, if it is possible, or even the high school learners in terms of teaching them English and so forth. So this is more way of creating your part-time income and so forth. In terms of research support, we normally at the master's and doctoral level, we will look for research assistants, those that can assist us to collect data, clean data, capture data. Look out for those kind of odd jobs just to keep your income growing as you go along. I'm nearing towards the end. Again, protect your investment, which is your qualification. Much as we are going to have, a challenge of what I call false economy trap, earning 500 on a side as a side gig, but then missing assignment. A case in point is that practical example that I gave of my cousin that decided to drop out because now Forex was starting to give him more money and so forth. So look in terms of what is the long-term investment. It is that qualification. If that's qualification, ensure that you have got a timetable that you follow religiously. So in terms of your studies, don't miss assignments. Make sure that your academic discipline is on another level. Then we're talking about the investment. And of course, you are not alone. Counseling is there, student fund is there, peer support is there, where you can talk with other students and so forth. But as I move towards closure, daily tracking becomes non-negotiable. Remember I said, give every rand a job. That's what I'm going to leave you with. Let it be in your mind. Let that every rand have a job for you. Zero high interest called debt. Closing account, for as long as you are not yet working, you are still relying on parents or on allowances and so forth, or some help. Then run away from closing accounts. And if at all they are willing to say we can give zero interest as store account, then you can. But those that have got interest, run away from them. Emergency buffer, we need it. So that if there is some, they say you are coming from KZN, you need to now catch a bus and travel, then you'll be able to travel if there is that emergency and so forth. We must always have that emergency buffer or for unforeseen circumstances. The fourth habit, skills development. Develop yourself, have micro learning courses that you teach yourself and then get certification. Microsoft does that, IBM does that, LinkedIn does that. Have those digital skills, communication skills that can assist you, analysis skills that can assist you. And then I talked about requesting support as early as possible or help as early as possible. Once you realize that you are going through financial or mental strain, go out for help. So in terms of 7 key activities that one can do, I mean, in the next week or so, as I move towards closure, make sure that you track every single rent. If there is any unnecessary expense, cancel. Do not even suspend temporarily, just cancel that unnecessary expenditure. Save 100 rand if at all is possible for your emergency buffer. In terms of your credit report, now and then check it. And this becomes important because we are living in the age of digital fraud and so forth. You will have forgotten your ID elsewhere in an internet cafe, somewhere in Sunnyside or elsewhere. Soon when you realize that ID has taken a lot of debt against your name, now and then check your credit record. I know banks have now introduced with the credit score within your banking app. Do go to that banking app and check. We always like to see it green to say we're fine. And as I say, it may sound like a joke. In other relationships, the financial record play a role and so forth. And ask for help before it is too late. Okay. So in terms of reflection, choose long-term peace of mind over temporary status. Ask yourself, will this spending choice bring me temporary status or temporary relief for people that I'm going to I'm going to impress, or it will be a long-term mental peace for my future self. And I think we need the latter. That is why I even highlighted it here. So that's what we are looking forward to. So I think here I don't know, program director, if you're gonna have questions at the end, but this is where I'm gonna pause. Remember, financial wellness is not an overnight event. It's a progress. It's a journey, which is comprised of continuous series of small intentional choices that are made on a daily basis. Thank you so much. I hope I've provoked some of you. You are going to instill that culture of spending. You are going to make sure that your financial discipline improve for better. Over to you, Ms. Ramashila.
Thank you so much, Prof. And I just want to appreciate the knowledge resource that you have shared with us today. And I hope it will help us to kind of arrive at a place where our finances are a source of empowerment rather than dread. Thank you so much, Prof.
Okay, I have a multifaceted question. So I'm in my last year of doing my degree. I'm doing communication science. And as I've listened and seen on the PowerPoint that was presented about acquiring like digital skills and everything, I just want to know, like, as like AI is becoming more like important, so to say, is it really necessary to focus mainly on AI? And then also I am like my school is paid for by my mother, so I don't really have like stress in terms of funding my own schooling. But then there's also stress in terms of, since I'm applying for jobs and getting rejected for jobs, there's not really financial stability for me. So I don't know how to go about that.
Thank you so much, Ria. And I do sympathize with you in terms of job application. It cannot be easy. Your first question is around digital skills. Is it only those skills that you have to build? And the answer is totally no. It's not only those, but there are a number of skills. I did make reference to 21st Century Skills report that is produced by World Economic Forum. And with that, they advise that we need to develop ourselves, and I'll say 360 degrees. So which then means while you may be good digitally, as far as that your skills are concerned and so forth, but you may find that you are struggling to communicate, and that becomes a challenge. So you ought to ensure that you are developing your whole self as far as all the skills, so that you become sort of, in the name of cricket, I would say all-round, right? To ensure that you don't only know about AI or digital skills, but there are other skills that you know. And let me give an example, if I can quickly just share here with that image. Yes, because then this will assist you. So if you check, we have got ability and skills, attitude and values, knowledge and information. It comes from World Economic Forum. You can just check that 21st Century Skills report. And then you'll then realize that at level 2, we're talking about the requirements to have cognitive and skills. And those are going to assist with creativity, critical thinking, digital skills and program, which is what I was giving an example on, problem solving, system analysis. And most world of work nowadays, you'll see in the job adverts, they will specify this. But over and above that, you must have interpersonal skills or social skills. Can you work with people in groups, in teams? There are other, and when you study psychology, they teach us about group dynamics and so forth. There are people that cannot work with other people. But collaboration, communication, negotiation, social-emotional wellness becomes important, so that then we can see that we are over and above hiring Ria Betsu, for example. She's also a team player. She's going to contribute and assist others. In terms of physical skills that are required, are you able to balance, to coordinate, and awareness and threat? And usually in interviews, we'll even ask you, will you be able to survive under pressure and so forth, right? So you can see. And then in terms of attitude and values, self-regulatory skills, whereas this one is interpersonal skills, this one is intrapersonal skills. In terms of adaptability, agility, consciousness, curiosity, being an initiator, and it goes hand in glove with creativity. So you see, so you have to develop the whole set of skills, and there are a number of courses that can assist you. While AI is pervasive and is an it thing that we're expecting, but you can also start to, say, I want to learn how to become data analyst. I know a friend of mine and a colleague of mine who transitioned from accounting. He's a qualified CA, but is now a data engineer and a data architect. As they say, AI is bringing new skills, and we have to check what are the new careers that one can come as far as AI is concerned. So I hope I've addressed that particular part. But you also indicated the other part of indicate that you are still, I think, dependent on the parents for funding. And this is where, if opportunity lend itself for odd jobs, then you can do. You said you are within communication science. Have you approached UNISA Radio and say, I want to learn from you and so forth, and of course many other community radios, your Swami TV and so forth, so that then you can start to check where lies your interest before you even complete your qualification and so forth, and can you perhaps leverage your skill before even graduation? That will be a plus. Half the time, most of us, we wait until graduation and then we start to knock on doors for jobs. Rather start as early as we can. I hope that assists. Thanks so much.
I'm in the position where I don't have any financial obligations, so I just have the ability to save. So how do I go about investing? What's the best course of action for me?
Okay, very good question there, Ms. Munsam. There are a number of options. First, we have to think about the goal. What goal do you have in mind? Are you going to invest because then you want to buy a property? Are you going to invest because you want to open a business? And the type of investment options really will be determined by whatever the goal that you have. So perhaps what we could do, we could refer you to, I don't know whether you have got a sort of a financial planner, but start with the goal in mind. What is that you want to do? And if it's sort of a long-term investment, then you can decide and say, am I going to take the investment in shares and equities? Because then you have to wait longer until you realize your benefits. But if it's sort of a short-term investment, then you can think of your unit trusts that I gave example, because perhaps at some point you may want to access that money in mid-term of the period. So it all depends on what investment goal do you have and what is it that you want to achieve. Based on that, then you will have various investment options that can be provided to you. And this reminds me in terms of, as you say, in your case, you don't really have much in terms of what is that you want to do, but there is that advantage that perhaps you can, you are able to save. If that is the case, I will then say, then put it in a long-term kind of investment, buy shares, buy equities, and leave that money there. But with the hope that whichever the share that you have bought from, whichever the company will perform well. Because again, in those cases, the changes in market conditions may affect the performance of that company. And when they have to declare dividends, they will not be able to declare dividends. They are going to retain those dividends. In some cases, they also take those dividends for future investment. So if I can quickly just show you on other workshops, I normally talk about that. So if you can check here, we have talked about emergency fund. And then I normally say 3 to 6 months worth of expenses. But if you want to create financial safety net, which is what you're talking about, there are various options: stocks, equities, bonds, or mutual funds. And these are the options that you can start to read further about and check how they operate. With most of this kind of investment, you are likely going to get a broker that can assist you, more like a middleman or intermediary. But again, stockbroking comes with a cost, because that person will also need to get some premium. And does it not eat into your investment? It will eat. But are you willing to say, okay, in terms of the peace of mind, they know better, they will do the hard job. I'll just, let's say, for example, I've got 10,000 that I want to spend, and I will see it in the next 5 years. Then they will do that hard exercise. Are you covered, Ms. Munsami?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Prof. Now moving on to our second speaker, Mr. Frank Mukwana. Frank Mukwana is a seasoned financial professional and regulatory specialist with extensive experience across financial sector supervision, risk management, corporate governance, and SME advisory. He currently serves as a regulatory analyst at the Financial Sector Conduct Authority, where he leads supervisory reviews on IT governance, cybersecurity, market conduct, and complaints management frameworks across South Africa's financial institutions. Frank holds a BCom Honors in Financial Management, a certificate in taxation, and is currently completing a master's in finance, as well as a postgraduate diploma in risk management. Today, his presentation will focus on career readiness, resilience, and financial independence. Everyone help me in welcoming Mr. Frank Mukwana with hearts and a clap of hands. Thank you.
To me, I believe that financial management basically is so foundational that the absence of it can then give rise to many of the issues that we see today. And as a result, I then believe that it is then central to how we then can build our lives from a very sound financial structure that is informed by basic element of boundaries, how we then going to then direct our resources, as indicated by Prof. Janu, that every rand should be afforded a responsibility that is clear. So given the fact that he has actually covered a number of issues that I was going to cover here, but given also my background, my focus will be, I will be giving a number of examples, and I'll allow the chair to indicate if there are questions on the line. I want this to be interactive, but from my experience, I started in banking, and the fact that I was in banking, I've seen a number of things. I've seen a host of professionals, people who are unemployed, people who are employed, and based on how they then interact with their finances, then you can be able to then see how best you can actually assist. And out of that, you can also see the personalities of people who are then banking with you as a banker. And out of that, you can then be able to build a financial product or advice that is going to be suitable. I must also declare that I'm not a financial advisor. I don't do financial advice. I don't really speak to product-specific issues. My discussions are basic, which I believe that if you learn basic financial management, you'll be able then to win some of the key battles that we see that are creating problems for people financially. And I also must indicate that because I believe that among some of the guys that are on the call, there would be those who want to see themselves in financial institutions, working in banking, working in any place where they deal with finances. You also see that if you do not then attend to your finances correctly, that may impact negatively your career or your career aspirations. Because what is then financial wellness? We define financial wellness as just the ability to meet your expenses and having some money left, meaning every other person who will live purely below their income, ability to ensure that I do not have expenses that exceed my income. And later then we will be talking about key things that are for this discussion will be knowing your finances and knowing your financial personality, and also the issue of budgeting. I regard it as foundational structure. The absence of budget can give rise to all other things, meaning without the budget, there are no boundaries and you cannot be able to direct your finances correctly. And then the issue of spending, and I call it the game of adjustments. That's where you say, okay, looking at my finances now, which out of all this priority list that I have, which I will cover first and which I will cover last, maybe with the remaining part of my money. And then also the issue of financial savings and investing. This one here answers the question to one of this one of the guys on the line, talking about, I have money, I don't have financial obligations, I want to know more about investing. And I think this will just help you a little bit in terms of deciding how you then want to see your money work for you in the future. So what I regard as key is that the central thing about working with finances, the key thing is knowing yourself, knowing exactly your triggers. Basically, people who know themselves, they know how to manage themselves. People who know themselves, they know what to avoid, and they know what relationships they can build so that they can focus on building the strongest part of themselves, other than feeding the weaker part of themselves. You know of these cases where if some of the things when you read here, you can simply be shouting and say, that looks like me. You do not look forward to money, and this is a person who's overly committed. All money is committed. Probably they don't meet their monthly obligations, or someone loves new things, loves the closer the better. Someone can be saying, oh, this is me. You have more than one credit card. This, I know of many people at the personal level who have many credit cards. You cannot resist two or one offers. Those who are married, you know that the person will be coming to tell you that I found this, they were on sale. And as a result, that's supposed to justify why they bought them, because they were on sale. The question would be, they budget for it or not? And that is one of those challenges. Sales trigger the buying of things you don't know you need. The same thing. You have new clothes you have not worn. For every funeral, there's an outfit to be bought. For every event, there's an outfit to be bought. There's this thing of you believe in living for now. This is those guys who would, in a scheme of things, they start telling you that we live once. And God being so good, then He gives them more long life, and then they learn that the decisions they made during this time, when they said we only live once, they'll then catch up with them later. And some of the cases you find that a person lives now and they cannot imagine the future, meaning it's only now that I should be worried about. Tomorrow will worry about itself, kind of cases, and then you worry about money at all times. This is where people find themselves that they are stressed about money. And you also have your access to online checking, shopping online. This is now the new problem that we see, because we have access to this high level of convenience that I don't have to go to the malls to buy. I can actually conclude transactions on my mobile cell phone. That creates a new problem for people dealing with managing their finances. And small things like you do not carry lunch to work or to school. I can spend what I have. So you find that your spending will then be limited to your ability to manage your spending will be limited to the fact that the pricing is not your decision to make. If you get to a space and they sell a cool drink, like I was once in Angola, and a drink in one of those hotels was listing for 100 Rand. And I had no choice because I already ordered a drink. But under normal circumstances, if I brought my own drink, if there was an opportunity to do so, that would have been managed. And you would know that in which category you belong here. But for you to be able to then appreciate the skills that are required to be able to manage your finances correctly, you don't have to know yourself and be honest with yourself that, okay, this sounds like me, and which of the things that we are speaking about here, they really demand of me to do something about them. And then we go further to the first part of our business, like I say, budgeting. You will forgive me, I would move very fast because of time. But also the fact that Prof. Nikki has really addressed key of these issues that I'm talking to here. And I'll just add one or two examples. The absence of a budget really says your money can go anywhere. In actual fact, you can buy something that is not even considered a need because money is available. But when you have a budget, you're basically working to direct your money to cover key of the things that they are basically where you separate your needs and your want. And John C. Maxwell just emphasizes the same point that Prof. Nikki was talking about, that budget is telling your money where to go instead of wondering where it went. It will go anywhere, even in the absence of budget. It will then leave your pocket, and you will then have to take a statement to just check, actually, where did this money go to? Probably those who know that on a Monday after a good weekend, you'll be sitting and looking at your expenditures and say, but what did I do with my money? So the budget can help you mitigate that kind of a risk. And I regard it as very key and fundamental. In the absence of budget, it means anything is to go for. But with budget, then you're saying, I'm going to pay for my house first. I'm going to pay for keep my transport costs first. I'm going to make sure the lights are on and all those kind of things. And out of that, you can actually be able to see that my budget should not necessarily it would inform my spending. Not the other way, not my spending, because out of the budget, you can actually filter in income, which is the next slide, where we are talking about the 4 components of a budget, where we talk about the net income. In the past, when I was in the bank, we'll have a person who will come with a letter of offer for employment. And out of that letter, they will want to buy a car, but they don't even bring a dummy pay slip that shows all the other key expenditures like your tax, your medical aid and other things. Out of this, then they would want to conclude a transaction. How the banks operate, they'll just use the same basic principle of framework that they use, that if it's 30% or 35% of your income, then you qualify. That is a wrong approach, because there are other costs that are not necessarily shown at that level that you're going to discover once you take delivery of your car. Then, of course, with your net income, you then look at the fixed expenses that you cannot run away from. This is basically, you need to have a place to sleep, you need to eat, you need to be able to go to work. That's where you then build to say, this I can fail at any level, but I should not fail to go to work. one friend of mine said, if a person cannot budget for the ability to go to work, that person does not need that job, because if you need the job, you'll make sure that you are at that work. And we've got also your variable expenses. These are some kind of flexible expenses where you can adjust, although they can be some kind of fixed expenses, but they have an aspect of variability where you can decide, instead of buying meat for 2,000, we can buy 800 rand and stuff like that. And discretionary is whether I go to a concert or not. And this is where, if there's enough money, and if you've also dealt with your savings, then you can attend to discretionary expenses. These are the things where you can say that I live once, but when you have dealt with the first important things, you have addressed your fixed expenses, including your savings or your investment plan. And here we talk about key steps, drawing a meaningful budget. This presentation will be shared. I know I'm flying with the presentation, but I take comfort in the fact that Prof. Nikki has really dealt and given this presentation. His presentation had really a lot of these things that I'm presenting here to you. You need to be able to know your income. There comes a time where you see people like it looks like they don't know their earnings and the limitations that comes with your earnings. My earnings determine my kind of commitments that I can have. In actual fact, what I'm trying to say is that I can't be earning 5,000 rand and be browsing houses in midstream trying to get an accommodation. That is an invitation for headache. Then secondly, you map up your expenses. You need to know based on your income, not necessarily based on expenses, because you can influence your expenses more than you can influence your income. And if you know your income, you know what you can afford and what you can't afford. Out of that, then you can build your expenditure. You can decide whether I'm going to stay in Mamelodi or I'm going to stay in Silver Lakes and all those things. You need to know your balance, which is your net balance after spending. This is where we always see problems, because people, they are not being realistic with their money. They always believe that a small amount left before they even pay those personal loans where they borrowed money from Joseph to pay Peter, they will still record this as their. This is where you are basically honest with yourself. Say, do I have any money left? Then if I do not have any money left, you go back to mapping up your expenses to say, which of my expenses can be taken down? Let me give you an example. I'm working towards concluding buying a property, and I went back to all my expenses to see where can I really reduce. And one of the things that came was to look into my insurances, and I phoned my insurance provider and say, okay, look, I've been a nice guy. Look at my insurance premium and tell me if I still have to be paying this much, or is there room to negotiate? And they dropped it by 400 rand. That 400 rand came into the new commitment that I'm trying to make, and which will then ease my commitment in terms of the total exposure. And of course, in the absence of not knowing your goals, coming to the one who wants to save, you don't save because you have money that is idling. You save because you've got a futuristic mindset. You're basically saying, what is the thing that I want to achieve in the long term or short term that would be something that I will pursue with this money that is available? That helps your savings goals, because if you just save for nothing, somebody's don't come and tell you a very sad story about their own problems that you are going to be tempted to make them your problems, which is not a very bad thing, but that can impact your savings. An example, I have it in my personal experience where one of my aunts passed on and there was no money to bury. But had I stepped back and just waited, somebody was going to come to the party and cover the expenses of the burial. Well, because I had money idling, I just said, no, I can cover the money. For many other reasons, maybe I wanted to look important. And then out of that, I spent over 40,000. And coming back, I had to start rebuilding that 40,000. Then I realized that it took me more than 3 years to come back to the same level. And if I were to discuss issues of inflation, whether this money can still buy what it could buy in that year, that's a discussion for another day. Or if I were to talk about opportunity cost, if I'd invested this money would have earned me this interest and stuff like that. So when you have a savings, have a goal. Either you want to retire comfortably, or you want to ensure that one of the commitments that you have, you want to buy your house cash and all those kind of things. So And we talk about draft a plan. Drafting a plan is non-negotiable. I went on holiday with my family. There was 2-3 years ago. I drafted a plan and communicated the plan to them to say, okay, look, this is where we are going. This is how much I have for where we are going. And as a result, we cannot afford to spend anything above this. Guess what? I had a daily budget for everyone who's with us to make sure that you've got your breakfast, your lunch, and your dinner, including some allowance for spending, whether you buy ice cream and stuff like that. But there was a time on the 4th day, that the holiday was for 7 days, they exceeded the budget, probably by 200%. The following morning, I packed everyone's bag, put it in a car, and we drove back. And of course, asked me the cost of doing that. The cost of doing that was that they could not talk to me for a few days. But I had to stick to the plan because there are kids who need to learn that sticking to the budget is not something you can negotiate. We do not negotiate plans that we've made, because once you have that, I can promise you these things will always be changing. But some of the changes are going to cost you your future. Some of the changes can affect you maybe for the next 3-4 years. Like I just gave an example of saying, I had 40,000 rand saved. That took me a number of years to save. When I spent that 40,000, coming back to rebuild that 40,000, I could not even imagine that it took me so long to just go back to the same position that as I was, because I had money that was idling in the concept of saying this money did not have any goal. So that's why I talk to issues of staying on track, discipline. We can talk some other time about the cost of discipline. And for people who are studying, you know what discipline means. But when it comes to finances, is that you should know at all given time your limitations. I go out, I've got friends at all levels, meaning I've got friends who are doctors, professors, and stuff like that. There's always a disclaimer when you go out for food or any other thing, says, I don't earn like you, I don't know what you earn, but I've got a budget and I'm going to stick to it. Meaning I'm simply saying I would not get excited because you guys have got profiles. I don't even, because your profiles are your profiles. After all, I have seen in my personal experience, people losing their hair because of how deep committed they are. Someone came, they had what you call, they heard about investing in property, bought a land for 6 million. There was a repayment of 62 million, plus 62,000 on that. And I asked the question after they've made that commitment, I say, you just sacrifice 62,000 rand of your monthly income for this thing that you assume is an investment. Just tell me, how is it an investment to you? And then never mind that. From tomorrow, what cash generating ability do you have since you've acquired this land? And of course, that was the source of problem. The hardest part was to dispose that land to restore the buying power of the person. It was one of those impossible tasks. In actual fact, the worst part of it was that the property had to be sold at the lesser value that it was bought. Those are the advices that come from the corners or from places where we cannot prove where they come from. So those are the things that we manage continuously as we try not to find ourselves in a ditch or in a problem that is unavoidable. Of course, then we talk about engage and expect. When I say engage and expect, if you've got Prof. Janu in your space, that is your go-to guy. I'm not trying to get people coming your way, but if you go to a bank and get a financial advisor, which is unpopular, very unpopular opinion, is that a financial advisor from the bank wants to conclude a transaction with you. So it may be that there would be conflict of interest in the decisions that they will drive you to make, and those decisions may not be in your favor. And this comes from experience. I've seen when I was some time back a financial advisor. I had financial advisors reporting to me, and you would get a client who's complaining about their financial well-being being impacted by a commitment they've made through the financial advisor. So that is what we're saying. You don't go to a financial advisor hoping to answer questions. Like I can say to the one who says, I've got money, before you even step and go meet an expert, formulate your goal. And the financial advisor must assist you on how to get to that goal, not the other way around. You're not going to find yourself trying to get the answers from a person about the things that only you know better. You know your circumstances better. You know who comes to you for financial assistance and all those kind of things. I'll answer that. Do I consult at a cost? No, I don't, but we'll come to it at the end of the whole thing. Spending defined. We know that spending is a process of using money, whether borrowed or from savings to purchase or anything that you need or want. Now, with spending, we know that spending is not limited to your income alone. You can spend using credit. Now we've got Pay Just Now, PayFlex, and all those things. And I can tell you for free, they are causing a real headache. Now, if you want a career in finance, you're going to have to manage your finances. Because the fact that they're going to check your credit profile, they're not only going to check if you're overly committed and stuff like that. They're only going to check even the patterns. In some of the risk job that I did in the past is that when you want to profile a person, if a person spends money closer to a gaming place like your casinos and stuff like that, it can be an indicative that this person is a gambler. And as a result, this person is a high risk person. If you were to borrow this person money, they may eat all the money before they pay you back. So you manage that risk. So spending is important. Spending is not meant to improve your social standing. You should not be used for that. And Prof. Vicky really delved deep into that. If you are more concerned about how you look, that alone can be a big problem in how you're going to manage your finances. If you are concerned about how people perceive you, if you cannot say no, which I struggled with saying no in the past. But since I started saying no now, to say, once I say no, I do not feel as bad as I used to in the past. I say no to everyone, my mother, my sister, my wife, and every other person, my kids, because a no that I give, it's a no that is informed by boundaries. You cannot spend what you don't have. You should not spend what you don't have. And I would not go borrow money just to go and make sure that people see me as a kind person. In actual fact, if being kind is synonymous with being reckless with my finances, I would rather not be kind. That's a topic for another time. So we talk about issues like what to consider before you're spending. We know what are my options. Here is one thing. Half the time, you would find that if you haven't done, if you did not do a proper assessment, any salesperson is going to give you their options and make it look like it is your option. But if you know your options, you know when something is presented and this is not what I want, then you can actually be able to exercise your rights and say, no, thank you, but this is not addressing the kind of need I have, which addresses the second part, say, what need am I addressing? I should know. And also in the short term, medium term, and long term. I always say, if all you're focused on is a short term, then we would have to have a discussion in the long term where we have to use your pension to cover your mortgage, close all your debts, and then you are left with nothing. Then you must go queue for SASSA money, which may not even be a quarter of your life that you were exposed to. And also you need to know the risks. The art of knowing the risk. The presentation prior to this one, it talks about the risk. You should know the risk of not managing your finances correctly. But you also need to know that if you do not even appreciate that risk correctly, you may not even worry about mitigating the risk. So let me then give it to you. I've seen in my life where people would work 40 years, have a pension of 3 million. They have a bond that is 1.3 million. They still have debts. They are left with 500,000. And then God being God and give them 30 more years to live. That is an sign of a person who was not ready for life post-retirement. And that's a topic for another time. So issues like, is it urgent? Is it within my budget? We know that somebody else's agency should not be my problem. In actual fact, I know of cases where people have an art. People who are reckless with their money, they've got an art of getting other people to join into their problems. And I've, as a victim myself, I've been there where a person gives you a story where you feel like, I have to do something now for this person. But if that thing will come at destabilizing my structure and messing up with my boundaries, then I'd rather not do it. Issues like can I afford to make that purchase? It's just basic as knowing that if I don't have the money available and that money it's not even meant for something else, then I cannot afford, or I can afford to do so. And do I also know all the costs involved? Like if you buy a car, you earn what my first car, I bought it. And after just buying it, I learned that cars need to be serviced, and the service of the car was on me. And then I realized that that's an expense I wasn't ready for. When you buy something like that, you filter all the applicable costs. And once you do that, you are able then to decide whether, if I'm earning so much, I know of people who are in the legal fraternity, medical space, where they've got cars of the profession. People in that space, if I'm a specialist, I should be driving an X5. But let me tell you something so nice. We don't know people and their support structure. Somebody just said they don't have business with, they don't have any commitments. I have commitments. I had to start working before I can start studying. So my space and environment was different by design, meaning I had to mind from the word go what I spent my money on. So we know that and I spoke about source of spending, we know that you can spend from income, borrowing, and saving. But I would rather advise that you spend from income and saving. Borrowing, you borrow for key things like your property, your car, and other key or other cash generating things. You don't just borrow for the sake of borrowing. In actual fact, when you go to the banks, to show you that the banks are not in the business of helping you manage your finances, they will tell you in advance, no, looking at your spending, do you actually qualify for an overdraft of 200,000? What do you want 200,000 credit card for? And coming to understanding saving, we know that half the time it's other savers who saves the day. Meaning, we've seen cases where people who are glamorous and looking good. I will talk of one example. A friend of mine, a doctor. He was even a clinical manager at the time. Lost his job for other reasons, and he could not cover his rent for the next month with that earning capacity that he had. And then that's where we say the assumption cannot be that high income earners know how to save. In actual fact, most of the time it's the opposite. And another trap that high income earners fall into, they want to solve everyone's problem. That's a dangerous trap. You can't solve everyone's problem. Probably send them to Gift of the Givers or other places. But if you are trapped into this thing of say, I'm a doctor, you can't pay a premium for just having a degree in medicine or being a lawyer. And in return, you find that your financial affairs are being immersed. Further to that, we know that these folks would decide that my kids should go to this particular private schooling and stuff like that. You need to be so practical with your finances and know your income, know your limitations, and also know your background. And just that will help you. Then we'll come to this thing of saying, savers, they know their spending habits. They know that they are conscious of their decision making, of their spend. They also know how to manage their yeah, say I've got beef with spenders. No, I don't have beef with spenders. I must tell you, I'm above 40. I've seen spenders. The spenders who are reckless spenders, they become a problem to everyone. In actual fact, if you don't know that spenders become a problem to everyone, go watch when a spender who did not match their finances die, and then we have to bury a big spender, cover their expenses. You realize that the finances of the spenders, of the savers, are impacted by a recklessness of the spender person. So in that tone, yes, it may sound like I have issues with spenders. The kind of issues I have with spenders is people who spend above what they earn. I have a big problem with that. And if the only thing I'll be shouting to my grave will be mind your expenses, because it is not only you that is affected. We have seen people who have taken their kids to big schools, pay big schools, and they die, and no one can carry that expense because it's too big for us to take over. Okay, so let's talk about issues of savings, like we were engaging earlier. You will need to know your short-term needs. What do I want to buy in the 5 year and below? Maybe I need to change my sofas. Then I start the work of saving towards my sofas, medium-term needs and stuff like that. 4, 5 years. This is mainly your schooling. I have a kid who is in primary now. I need to worry about taking them to varsity. If they decide to want to go to Cape Town, do I have financial means to be able to assist them in ensuring that they get their goal? long-term needs, anything above 10 years. Here we talk about ensuring that you've got your good pension fund in place. You have to plan. And because of the time, we can't talk about the issues, but we can bring this to practical space where you know of people who looked good when they were working and they look like they are hobos now, but they were working. So it means something was missing in their space. They did not anticipate probably to live that long, or to retire. I don't know, maybe their capacity to earn money. But you know that when you're old, employers have got no time for you, and you can't start a business at that time. So that would be too late. And I want to conclude, and this just making sure that we stick towards time. If I rushed, I apologize for that. I will still be available for taking questions if there are any questions. But I can simply tell you from the codes of people who've been around, money, like emotions, is something you must control to keep your life on track. And then it's not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more that is poor. Robert Kiyosaki said, financial decisions, they are emotional before they are technical. And I believe the previous speaker was addressing key fundamentals of ensuring that you are balanced emotionally, to know that once you have when to achieve that emotional stability, you will then be able to make good financial decisions. It is then out of all those things that as much as it may sound like being financially savvy or ensuring financial wellness is something that is optional, no, it's not optional. It's actually non-negotiable. And because we cannot control you further than what we say now, but I can tell you for free, we are surrounded by examples of people who did not take such teachings into account. And as a student, it's even better. If I had been told, and actually I must tell you, I was a business manager, a branch manager of Standard Bank at some stage, and I was so overly committed that one time after getting paid, I did not check my statement. Just got paid yesterday. The following morning, I passed by McDonald's to buy breakfast and the card declined. And that was a sobering moment because according to me, as much as I was committed, but I could not have failed to buy a breakfast at McDonald's. But then there was an opportunity for me to say, maybe I've overrated myself and I'm not even realistic in terms of the way I lead my life. And out of that, I made decisions. And I can tell you, and lastly, the professional traps that we see is that if a person believes that you're a lawyer, people who have never set their foot at university will be telling you can't be a lawyer and drive a Polo. You can't be a professor and drive a Corolla and stuff like that. Those are the things that you will manage using the skills that Prof. Janu was talking about, to say you need to be fully aware of yourself. Being fully aware of yourself, that you've carried a different DNA, you are unique, your circumstances are unique. For you to address your real issues, you'll need to be realistic in terms of what you're facing. If you are the sole breadwinner at home, you need these lessons more than any other person. If you want to make sure that your degree, as he indicated, that protect your primary asset. A blacklisted person cannot work in finance. A blacklisted person lowers their opportunity of being employed. So ask me if this is a negotiable phase of things. I don't think so. And then that's me concluding my presentation. Thank you very much.
So on my side, it was more like it's not a question per se. I just wanted to acknowledge the two speakers, and I wanted to say I think Prof. Nikki was more of our mother being soft on us, whereas Mr. Frank was coming on hard on us. Hey, he was just the farmer and saying no, you should never let other people's problems become your problems. So it's a really takeaway whereby we need to reflect on how other people's decisions can impact on ours, because we would usually the spenders would give us some sob stories and would buy into that, because I am a victim of that. I have a cousin who's, I would say, lucky with money, and whenever they got that money, like they would spend on unnecessary things, designer clothes, all that. And whereas when I have a little cent, I wouldn't even come to the amount that they would get. I would think on, okay, let's rather buy the things that would last us longer, and they would then have finished their money and come and borrow, and would say, "Oh, okay, maybe I can help there and there." But with what Mr. Frank said, hey, yeah, he was just disciplining us and say, hey, you are not a gift of the giver, so stop it. So yeah, I have that very loud and clear. Thank you. That's my take. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you so much, ma'am. I'm sure our presenters appreciate your comments. Tando, you can open your mic and ask your question.
I wanted to ask in relations to what you meant on usually when a person has a very standard profession, or like a very suitable, so like your lawyers, your accountants, or like any form of like upper echelon career. Because you also mentioned somewhere that pardon me, I'm losing my train of thought, but you mentioned somewhere that, you know, you also need to be very strict and very mindful with how you show up for your social family and like your community. I just wanted to ask, where or how can you draw the line as far as that is concerned?
Okay, yeah, let me give it to you this way. You have got what you call limited resources, and that should guide you. My point was not saying if in the abundance of resources, you can assist, please do so. But if your assistance is going to be detrimental to your future and also your stability, then that will create problems for you and you'll be somebody's problem. So it is in that context that I'm saying you cannot, in some cases, be a savior of people who cannot make financial decisions. And also the aspect of standard. I'm from the village, meaning I was the first guy to work at home. My commitment was simple. I'm not going to be helping you to look good. I can assist you with your school-related affairs, nothing else. Meaning I can work to develop the structure so that the structure can stand on its own in the future. Because we spoke, and Prof. John spoke about the aspect of sustainability. In cases where people just help people without minding the risk of creating dependency, it's that those people, they forever. And the saddest part is that I've seen cases where they said, we did not ask you to do this for us. Or they turn against the very same person who helped them. So if yours is trying to raise your social standing by trying to help everyone, I can tell you for free that always backfires. So it must be informed by your resources, that's the one. And also by the fact that you are helping to empower, not just to keep people at the same level. I hope that helps.
Yes, I do appreciate that. So my key takeaway is showing up for others should not necessarily cost you your stability. I get that.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you.
My question for today, is it possible for somebody to build their credit score without taking any credit at all?
Okay,
yes,
listen, I'm not sure if you directed that to me or not, or to the other speakers. Okay, there is the concept of banking. The credit score is a tool that is used by financial institutions to be able to see if they can trust you with their money. And if your intention is to be able to take credit in the future, they would then have to test have you managed your commitments in the past? And to answer your question, no. In a softest, I hope that was very soft. You would, if you are intending to buy a house, because of the founders of this credit scoring, you could be a person who earns 150,000 and take home, never taken a loan, and you go and ask for 5,000, say, we've never seen you pay anything. We don't know if for sure you can. Is that logically sound? I don't know, but I'm telling you the reality of it is that the banks, the way they build their systems is that they should then check your history, and that is the repayment history. How have you paid Vodacom? Did you pay them on time, all the time? And out of that, they can say, no, I can trust you. So how do I then bring it home is that half the time people, they can tell you they're capable of something, but that's why we want the experience in some cases to say, show us where you've worked and you have done something like that, similar to this thing. And that's the same thing.
Okay. Thank you.
I hope it helps.
Got it.
Yeah.
Yes.
Stefan, you can open your mic and ask your question.
Thank you so much. Good morning. Can everyone hear me?
Yes, we can hear
Yes,
you.
we can hear you, yeah.
Great, great. Thank you. Mine is a short one and is specifically directed to Mr. Frank. So giving you advice and your your robustness, are there any maybe short courses regarding financial management or financial literacy, basic ones, that you can recommend for us to actually follow through with action with regarding what you just advised us to do? Thank you.
All right. No, thank you. I don't. Maybe that will sound like I don't necessarily have a specific course because how I built my financial literacy was through experience at the time, and then also the courses I've done, which are long courses, they are not short. But I know that in UNISA, they've got that lifelong learning programs. Probably have to look there if there are any courses that would assist you in terms of issues of financial planning, the literacy. But I know also without any pointing to any, that there are those courses out there that would assist, and that would be the very good step to actually take and say, let me go learn, because after learning that, you can take that and say, how do I then apply it in my specific circumstances? And then I would encourage you to do that, but unfortunately I can't answer in terms of, I can't say to you go to Damelin, go to UNISA, go to I don't know what they have, but I know that there are programs. Moonstone has got some, all these universities, they've got those programs which run for 3-4 weeks, some they run for 3 months, where they can actually assist you with financial planning for your life. I hope it answers you. But somebody asked the question here. I hope I can be allowed to answer it. You said, can I buy a car without any credit record? Yes, you can. Actually, if you don't have any adverse findings, it can be one of those expenses, because it is dependent on the financial institution that will approve you. But here's the risk, is that they may actually put a little premium on your interest rate. They can put 1% extra, maybe above your rate, your standard rates, to manage that risk. But yes, in the past we had people who just get with a letter of appointment, they go get a BMW, the latest, and they pay for that car. So institutions will still exercise their discretion, looking at your circumstances, and then they will make a decision. They can give you a credit with a red credit profile.
Yes, can the prof please repeat in like briefly that part where you talked about sources of spending, and lastly he mentioned that when we take a credit or maybe purchase something like a car, we should be aware of all the costs involved. But that is not always the case. It's not practical. Some of the things you see them once you are already in. What is it that his advice with regards to unforeseen costs like those? Thank you.
Okay. I was struggling to hear your line, but if you'd help me, you wanted to understand if in an event where you buy a car, how do you then manage this aspect of knowing knowing in advance other related costs? If I captured it correctly, and how do you mitigate against that?
Yes, Prof. How do I cope with those costs that I couldn't see beforehand, related to that purchase?
Oh, yes. Oh, you want to talk about the coping? These are advices I gave to some of the very closest friends of mine. You need to learn to downgrade. That's the hardest thing that people want to do, even worse if they've got a status of some sort. But if it happens that you are in commitments that once you have them, you realize that this is beyond what I can handle, you have this as a right. You can approach your bank and say, no, I think I was too excited, and then they'll take back their asset and then, of course, charge you something. You'll suffer some setbacks. But, of course, that will be the price of the lending. But you can actually downgrade yourself. In actual fact, I encourage that before you get into excessive trouble, you learn to re-look at your finances and say, actually, I'm the kind of guy who must eat 2 meals a day, but that's an example. But it's an example of saying maybe I can only afford to buy myself 1 pair of shoes a year. You need to really find a way. If I lived, and this is a personal experience, by the way, I told you about me being in McDonald's failing. I lived in a townhouse. I drove a car that is reasonable, that has a status of some sort. I first got a guy who can buy that car from me, and I let go of my apartment, and I went to rent for 800 Rand in Mamelodi. It took me less than a year to recover financially. But you must understand the cost was that people thought this is a sign of failure, but that's not. That's where you're launching yourself. It's like hiding yourself and spending time to go recover and be able to rectify your wrongs. In the absence of that attitude, I can promise you one thing, it will be one problem or the other. And I also know of cases where people think they can actually increase their income, their earning capacity overnight. No, you can't. In actual fact, I can promise you, we see now with the issue of CPI and stuff like that, the government increases salary by 3%, 4.5% and stuff like that. That is basically saying nominally we're raising yourself, but the goal is to cover the inflation that affects other people. If you are in a school, if you take your kids to a private school that progresses their school fees by 10%, you are belonging to a different brackets of inflation. So that's a topic for another time, which is subject to debate. But inflation as it is now, it's not inflation that covers all of us here. So then you should know your circumstances very well. You should be very practical in saying, if I'm taking my child to this school that rises the school fees by 10% every year and my income grows by 3%, it means there's a phase I may not be able to afford this, but unless I sacrifice something. Then have those discussions with yourself. To say, if I want to keep my child in that expensive school, what is that thing that I'm going to sacrifice? If I've changed my car every 5 years, maybe I may have to defer that. But if you don't do that, I can promise you, you will be a sub. And the cost of not financial planning is high blood pressure, diabetes, and all these many other issues. So the cost of it is compounded in a sense that it can even end up killing you. Let's leave it at that. So you need to find a way to downgrade your life so that you can live within your means. I hope that answers you.
Hi, everyone. So my question is, how do we find a balance between like saving, investing, and also enjoying a bit of life? Because on my side, I do have fear that I feel like I'm saving a lot, investing a lot, and I fear that I'm missing out because obviously time is not on my side. So how do I create that balance? Like, for instance, earlier last month, I made an appointment to see a doctor for my eyes, but I still have my old glasses. You know, they say you have to change them every 2 years. So I said, okay, I think the 2 years has passed. Let me go see the doctor. But then when the time comes, I'm like, okay, I think I can still see with this old glasses. Let me just save this money. So I do have a bit of a fear that I feel like I'm saving a lot. So how do I create that balance?
Thank you. You need to do what you call targeted savings. You can't save for the sake of saving. And then you die, we eat your money, and then you haven't tested part of the money. It must be balanced in a sense that your savings should be goal-orientated. It must be driven by goals, not necessarily just saving for the sake of savings. And I'll tell you why. People who do not learn how to save for a particular goal end up having money that is available for other things, like as I indicated earlier, that you will bury people who don't have money to bury themselves. But because you need to create a balance, when you have achieved your goal, you need to then reward yourself within reasonable means. Meaning, you should not fail to go to a concert when you've got means after you've done the savings. Hence, I've indicated earlier there that your discretionary spending should be dependent on if you have ticked all the boxes. If I save something for the future, if I address all the needs I've got, do I have got a comfort savings, which is just that art of making sure that if I were to lose my job today, I can cover with immediate effect before my pensions or anything comes out, my living expenses. Then after that, you can then be kind to yourself, eat an ice cream or just, because that in itself, people will not want to stick around you. You're not fun to be around. But as you try to be within, have fun within reasonable means, because you have achieved your goal of savings or you are on track with your goal of savings. Does that help you?
Yep, I think it does help.
I just want to ask if, let's say you just got a job and then you've got a site, you want to build at home, and then now you check your monthly expenses, maybe, okay, I have money for groceries, I have money for rent, and then now I want to push that project back at home. And then now you are not left with anything like in your bank, like maybe a 200 rands, but then now there's a project that you are actually pushing. Could see this money that I was going to save for maybe something else, I'm just like doing this project. Is it wise, or maybe you can just cut in the materials that you are buying every month for that project so that you can have some saves just for emergencies? Or it's okay because there's actually something that it's in your mind that is your goal that you're actually doing at that point. You are not specifically saving at a particular month and then I'm just going to save and then at once I'm going to build, but you are actually buying like now and again, like every month. I'm not sure if I make sense that you just spend and then you don't left with like anything, like close to nothing, because there's some project that you're kind of pushing. Do you have to like cut the cost of the project that you have something left for any emergencies? Do you regard that as saving or what? Yeah, I think, I hope I'm clear.
Yeah, I think I understand you. You're simply saying building from your salary. Is that so?
Yes.
Okay, I'm not going to say it's right or wrong, but I'm just going to talk about the risks. The risk is that, one, you are saying to me, I've started a project without all the resources available to complete the project, and I'm banking so much on my job that I know my employer loves me so much that they may not fire me, and then I have a half-built property. So do you think that would be a better approach? If you lose your job, you'll still be able to proceed with your program without any savings? Or it will mean that if you lose your job, then that's it, you can't proceed. What am I coming to is that as much as there could be, if you grew up in a home, they didn't have a home for 22 years, it cannot be an emergency in your own sense of the word. Someone may want to make it an emergency, but I believe that you have to start by saving. Why do you save? You then pitch at the highest level possible so that the completion of that project does not prolong longer than you can take. Now, coming to whether it will, the savings part and all those competing expenses. My personal take as a non-financial advisor who is accredited to give financial advice, I would not bring closer and create emergencies that are where they are not emergencies. I got a job, yes, but let me stabilize first. Let me see where this job is taking me while I learn how to save, while I learn about my finances. From there, I can pitch my project at the level that would then be informed by whether do I have the capacity or not. Sometimes 7 months down the line, you realize this job, as much as it's paying me, but my mental health is not improving. It's messing up my mental health. You want to quit, but you can't quit because you've got a project that you are building at home. You have got expectations that you've created from your parents that you may not be able to sustain. That's where you now decide, maybe let me unalive myself, and then this will be a shortcut out of this situation. So in the shortest term, the answer is that no, don't start building just because you got a job. Save first and then build.
Okay, thank you so much.
All right.
And for now, I would like to call on Mrs. Makanya to do the vote of thanks, to thank our speakers and our students for attending, and to also do the closing for us. Mrs. Makanya, if you're here, please open your mic. The platform is yours.
Certainly. Thank you, Madam Chair. It is an honor for me to deliver a vote of thanks on behalf of the Directorate for Counseling and Career Development. Yes, what a robust discussion today. Firstly, our sincere appreciation goes to Prof. Nikki Jano for reminding us that financial wellness is not the same as being rich, but about making wise financial decisions. His insights on resilience, the psychology of money, saving, generating income, and making every rand count have challenged us to think differently about our financial futures. And our heartfelt also goes to Mr. Mukwana for your practical guidance on being intentional with our spending, budgeting, goal-directed savings, and planning for the future. Your presentation has equipped us with practical tools that we can begin to apply immediately. And of course, and it helped us to be very realistic and be very, very intentional on how we spend our money and how we spend money wisely in terms of our family relations and our acquaintances. So together, ladies and gentlemen, our speakers have shown us that financial success begins with discipline, planning, and intentional choices. And I just want to say thank you to the Directorate for Counseling and Career Development for organizing this valuable seminar. And thank you to our students and colleagues for your active participation, the program director, the colleagues behind the scenes who've been facilitating this process. Thank you very much for your hard work in making this day a success. So on behalf of the Directorate, thank you once again to our speakers and everyone who contributed to making today's seminar a success. Thank you, Dr. P, for a warm welcome earlier this morning, and our program director. Thank you for driving this ship with such grace and dignity. Thank you to everyone, and please do have a wonderful day. Thank you.